Hello and welcome to a new interview from MinnMax. MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better. I'm Ben Hansen. We're glad you found us. This is an interview with Brian David Gilbert. You're either a big fan or you've stumbled across one of his videos and said, what the hell is this? I really like it. He's known for his video series and video essays on his personal YouTube channel, and at Polygon, the series Unraveled became very popular, and now he has left Polygon. So it's fitting our larger theme of doing way too many exit interviews when people are shifting up their career. You can look through our archive to find other ones with Kyle Bossman, Dan Reichert, Mike Mahardy, Andy McNamara, a lot of other folks. So we talked to Brian here in this interview about his history, why he's leaving Polygon now, the journey of Unraveled, lessons he's learned along the way. We hope you enjoy the interview. There's a lot to learn from Brian David Gilbert's career at this point, even though he's still very young. But if you want to unlock the podcast version of this, if you're watching this video version on YouTube and you want to unlock the podcast version of this entire interview, all of our other interviews, early access to the MinnMax show, podcast versions of Max Spoilers, The Deepest Dive, a lot of other content, and just help support independent games media in general, you can go to patreon.com/MinnMax, and there are two N's in MinnMax. We'd appreciate it if you checked us out or gave us just a sub on the YouTube channel. We'd appreciate it. Without further ado, here's Brian David Gilbert. Brian David Gilbert, welcome to MinnMax, sir.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you. You're smiley. How you doing right now? How you feeling about this stage of your life?
I'm doing all right. I'd say that all things considered, I should be a lot more anxious than I currently am. But the thing is, my constant level of anxiety is basically at I would say 40 to 50% for normal people. And so right now that it's gone up to like 60 or 75%, that's no different from my normal state. So I'm hanging in there. But yeah, other than that, I'd say I'm doing pretty okay.
So you took the leap. You left Polygon.
Yes.
Getting into that whole Patreon lifestyle, which I did, I guess, the end of 2019. I recommend it. I think it's great. We can unpack all that stuff a little bit later. But the anxiety levels, do you feel like you've landed on that cushion yet? Like, you jumped out of the plane. Did you find your pillow?
I think so. I would say that this has not been like a complete random choice, a very impulsive decision. Like, this has been a slow process of multiple months of me crunching the numbers and being like, I can survive on X amount of money if I leave. And so I feel like I've hit that point now where I don't feel worried about paying rent anymore, which is a huge, very wonderful privilege that I now have. But I'd say that there was a part of me that, leaving a corporate media position where you kind of have that grind of I need to produce an amount of videos or else I will become irrelevant or no longer useful to the company.
Yeah.
And as you probably know, internet media is not the most secure of positions in the best of times. But I think when I was leaving, I was like, oh, it'll be nice for me to have a chance to relax and really get to think about my projects. And I've already in the, what is it, Wednesday, the third day of me actually getting down to the freelancing self-employed lifestyle. I'm already I should have produced a video yesterday. I should have put something out already. Why have I'm taking so long? What is wrong with me? So I think it'll take a little bit of time for me to kind of get to the point where I feel comfortable about the amount of stuff I'm producing, but hopefully I get there soon.
Yeah, it's a constant lesson that I keep needing to remind myself of is and I think in the Patreon life, it's so easy to get so zoomed in on what you're doing that I totally get that feeling of just every once in a while I feel like I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. I need to stay up late. I can finish this. I can put a video out today. Then I realize we just released a 3.5-hour discussion about Cyberpunk today. Even if the most hardcore fans are clamoring, they have something. You need to relax and zoom out and think about, how much content you absorb from your favorite creators online. Realistically, I think at MinnMax we crank out a lot of stuff and I'm proud of it, but realistically from my favorite creators, it's I'm good for maybe one podcast and maybe one video a week and I feel good on that, so trying to calibrate that is a really tough part of the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of the reasons when I was going indie, it was a lot of trying to give myself the time to do the things that I don't think would normally work well. Like I think like the stuff that I feel passionate about and like think in my brain, oh, I am interested in this, and so hopefully someone else will be. But like it might take a month for me to like really practice enough or like get it into a good enough position for me to want to release it. And so I'm trying to again recalibrate, figure out what it is that I'm trying to do. It's weird to say that it's new to me when I've been a video producer for multiple years now.
Right.
But it is a new sort of space for me. But I'm excited about it.
What here's an impossible question. What does your audience want? What do you think they want versus what do you want to make?
I feel very fortunate that my audience has kind of gone along for the ride of the stuff that I produce, because I think there's a lot of times that I feel like I have, betrayed my brand, quote unquote, where like I don't know if I will ever do a thing that is the same as Unraveled ever again. Just because like I don't know if that's what's going to be interesting to me. But I've also like the most recent video I posted on my personal YouTube channel was a like 6-minute like surreal horror, which is not what I'm known for. I don't think some people would consider all of my content surreal horror, but that was like when I was about to post that, I was like, I don't think this is going to do well, but I am proud of it, so I'm going to put it up. And then it luckily found a very big audience and people really enjoyed it. And like that was a thing that I was very reassuring to me, that I was like, oh, if I take the weird leaps to try to do the stuff that I am passionate about, I feel like there will at least be a core audience that is willing to go to that area with me. And so I'm hoping to keep doing that. And sometimes the weird leap will be me doing like a dumb tutorial video that has nothing to do with anything else that I do. But like, I think I feel very, again, comfortable that and fortunate that the audience seems to like to watch me do a thing so long as I actually care about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm trying to really lock in, is like focus on the things that I am interested in and someone else will be interested in as well.
Yeah. So that video about how to become your own boss and make $20,000 a month, is that what it was?
Yeah.
When you made that, was that like a test to see, can I go independent? Or at that point, were you locked in on, I know I'm leaving and let's just see how well this will do?
So I had kind of like been planning to kind of wrap things up for a while. That was less a thing that I was doing to test the waters, really. That was more just a thing that I kind of really wanted to do just because it was something I couldn't do at my Polygon job, because it's so unrelated to anything that would happen there. And so like I've really wanted to make it, and I started making it like months before I actually published it. And so that was kind of just like, I would like to put this out because I think it's fun. But it was one of those things that since it happened in October, it was a very, at that point I had basically locked in that I was going to be leaving at the end of the year. And so it was reassuring to have people still like it. If it had completely bombed, I would have been like, oh boy, I'm going into something weird. But the fact that it did pretty well was, again, reassuring.
It has to be nice. Take this in the spirit which is intended, but it's nice when your brand is weird. So I don't think your audience is going to be like, what the hell is that? Some sort of weird video? What are you doing? Stop it.
Yeah.
Talk about Pokemon again, please.
I'm glad that I have made a name for myself for doing things that are rarely similar. I mean, a lot of my stuff will kind of fall into the same pattern just because of how I write. But like, I'm glad that people are willing to take that leap.
Are you planning on making game-related content for the Patreon? You think that's going to be just a thing that bubbles up every once in a while? I'd imagine your audience is screaming for that to some extent.
Yeah, it depends. I think like a big reason that I left Polygon was partially just because it becomes kind of a box in not a fun way when you have to be tied to something someone else created, right? So like for video game criticism and content, that was like something I cared enough about, obviously, to get the Polygon job. But what I really loved doing was like, again, building weird worlds or like taking enough of that information to spin it out into something wild. And so I think for me, leaving Polygon was like a chance to hopefully be able to make stuff from scratch that doesn't require you to know about Sonic the Hedgehog in order to enjoy, right? Like I think like but the fact is, like, I still play a lot of video games and I still care a lot about video games. I do a Twitch stream in the mornings, which is an exercise stream of me riding a bike and playing video games every morning. So like, if that's enough for you, if that's enough gaming content for you, like, I'll still be doing that for now. But it would have to be something really, really like specifically interesting that I really have something to say about, I guess, to be talking specifically about like a video game. And there will be games like that. Like I rarely shut up about Celeste, and so I will still be talking about that forever. But like, yeah, I'd say that it's hard to kind of pin down like, I think for like, other great creators that I love, like Tim Rogers, who left Kotaku to continue to do his work. His obviously, when he swapped over, his videos were going to be similar, and also to an even more extreme extent, more Tim Rogers than he could ever believe in one video. And so like that was great for him when he left Kotaku to continue to do that same kind of stuff. And that was like, again, a fear for me, is that like, I don't know how much video game content I'm going to be putting out there. But it, again, seems like a lot of people are willing to watch my stuff regardless of whether or not it's based on that.
Yeah, you're an artist. You're a strong, independent voice. But do you think there'll ever be a tiny little, I don't know, hardcore gamer on your shoulder saying, man, if I made a video about Sonic the Hedgehog, I know it would probably do 150% of the traffic at least?
Yeah, I mean, there is that part of me. There's definitely that like, oh, if I need to, I could go back to that well and figure out and do some stuff about games, because I love to talk about them, but I think it'd have to be something different. I mean, honestly, I would love to like start being involved in games in like a different, on the opposite side of it, whether or not that's like writing or voice acting or whatever it is for the games themselves. Because I think like that's the thing for me, is that I want to be part of the thing that's being talked about, I guess. I want to like, I think for me, I love to, again, I love to read a lot of games criticism, and I love to like, I watch a lot of game related media on YouTube, but like, that's never been something that I've felt good at necessarily, which is a weird thing to say, since I, worked for Polygon for many years and made videos about video games, but it never felt like that was like the thing that I excelled at. And so part of that's just like my own inadequacies of like, what can I personally say about a video game that hasn't already been said or couldn't be said better by someone else? And so, yeah, I think the things that I tend to work best at are like, again, building the world that someone else could enjoy, or creating something that can hopefully foster discussions later. I found a lot of times that like I'll make a video and some people will like completely miss what I had originally intended for the video to be, and then some people will find stuff that I absolutely didn't intend and makes me sound way smarter than I actually am. And they're like, wow, I can't believe you did an allusion to this old book. And I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying, but I'm glad you found it. I'm glad. Go for it. Feel free.
Yeah. So overall, you want to move up the cultural assembly line a little bit, be more at the front of the thing.
Yeah, I'd like to be somewhere around there. And like, I don't mean this in any sort of way of like, talking about games is perhaps the most important part of like that's like the culture and like the thing I want, the thing I love, the thing I've been a part of for my entire life. And I think part of it's just like, I want to make something that makes someone just excited, or just as excited as I am when like, Metroid Prime 4 eventually comes out 10 years from now. Like, I can't wait to talk about that and and hang out with people and like interact with that media. And like, I want to make that for someone else to be able to talk about.
So I haven't been paying attention. You're saying you just left to make Metroid Prime 4?
Yeah, so I have been contracted by Nintendo.
Oh, cool.
They've been having some troubles, and so I'm there to like, help speed up the creation process.
The new voice of Samus.
Yeah, it's a wild choice, but
someone's got to do it.
Say no.
So I found you years ago, and I'd imagine my experience was similar to a lot of people's experience of just stumbling across this Polygon video and then saying, who the hell is this guy? What is this? And then really going down a rabbit hole. And it's rare, I think, to find a voice, especially in the video game industry, that make you do a double take of like, this is such an original voice. They stand out so much. Who is this? And I think I'm just going to project a lot of people have this experience as well of Googling around, trying to figure out who you are, finding your, personal YouTube channel, and then finding the best comeback ever video and be like, okay, well now I automatically like this guy. I'm sure you're very sick of that video on your YouTube channel, but it's just immediately like, got it, love it, and now you're locked in.
So that video, I mean, like the fact that that one went viral relatively early on in my like YouTube career, like it was a blessing and a curse because it brought a lot of people into watching my stuff. And, but then like it also gave people the wrong idea of what kind of content I make, or it just made people think that was 100% a real thing that I do. Like my laugh is exactly that way. I still get like messages to this day of being like, is that your actual laugh? And it's like, not quite, but like, I honestly, when similar kind of like to the most recent video, to my 20K video, was that like, when I made that video, I was 100% ready to be like, this will be my least liked video, and I will cherish it because I think I crafted it well. And then it blew up, and I was like, oh, I should have been careful what I wished for. This is dangerous now.
But I love that like you included it in your pitch video to Polygon. Like it's such a weird sign of the era where you're like, technically I've gone viral, check it out. But I think that's important, and clearly it paid off for them to take a gamble on, hey, let's go for the guy who's gone viral technically before.
Yeah, it's the quantifiable stuff of like the internet is still so weird to me because like a lot of people in corporate media have never I mean like on the higher upper echelons of like media companies, I would be surprised if they have spent any time on the internet because their concept of like what viral is, they're like, oh well, you could just go viral on this video, right? And it's like, no, there's like 8 different weird things that might happen that could potentially push you into a space of going viral. But like it's always a hard thing to describe to people. That it's like when you go viral, it's usually accidental and it's usually unwanted. And so hoping to go viral and like aiming to get a viral video is never going to get you anywhere. You just kind of have to hope and like try your best and make something that, again, you're proud of, and hopefully it'll find that audience.
I think the greatest testament to your work at Polygon is, maybe you disagree, but the fact that you can frickin' release an unraveled video that the headline is just Kirby, and it breaks in millions of views. Like, you have built up that audience and that trust that just seeing a headline that says Kirby, it's like, well, this has got to be good. I mean, that's insane that you pulled that off.
It was that I like one of the hardest parts when I first started at Polygon. We had it was a totally different style where we were trying to produce like videos every week. Each video producer was producing something every week, which is so much work and also hard to make something that's like interesting in that amount of time. And there was a part where we kind of like rebranded, and then like the things that I've always been worst at are thumbnails and headlines. Like I've never cared about that. I've never been good at it. I never know how to like, do the YouTube face of the like, oh, in the thumbnail in order to like post and then like he did what? Like I don't care about it, and I never want to be good at it. But like,
thank you for giving me my thumbnall for this video, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Now you can just go ahead and screen cap that. I think the like having that was like the moment, both Waluigi and Kirby, where I could just say the name and then have it be that. Like that was the moment when I was like, oh, this is like big enough that people are going to still click on it. And like that's, again, so fortunate that it kind of hit that point where I could just give you a basic concept and people would be willing to watch regardless of what that concept or where that concept would go.
It is so fascinating to hear you say like, headlines and thumbnails, I don't know. Whereas every other person on YouTube is pulling out their hair trying to just nail thumbnails and headlines. But I mean, reading between the lines, you're almost implying like, if the content is funny and good enough, the thumbnail and headline barely matter. Is that the takeaway?
I mean, that's I would say is the takeaway once you've found an audience. Like I
Yeah.
like 100%. Like if you're building up to something, just having like a one word title and like a not interesting thumbnail is probably not going to get people to click on it.
Yeah.
Although I've been recommended plenty of YouTube videos from like 12 years ago that are just like duck.mp4 and like I'll click on that. Sure, let's see what happens. But like yeah, the whole point is that I've always hoped that I could get to the point where people are potentially not gonna like what video I make, but trust me enough that that whatever video it is that I put out, they're willing to at least give it a shot to see, you know, if it's any good. Essentially, like regardless of what that thumbnail or headline might be.
Yeah. I was talking to other video editor at MinMax here, Leo Vader, about you, and if he had any questions for you, because he makes his own video essays. And he had the question that I'm sure you get all the time. You know, he just says, how is it possible that every video you make goes viral? What is that secret? And I mean, do you have anything that we haven't talked about yet that you think is a secret to the success here?
So the thing about it's kind of hard to describe. Like I've never understood YouTube trending. I never will. I don't want to. That kind of dark magic is a knowledge beyond me, and I don't want to know it. But like there have been weird times when like I've posted a thing and a video has gotten onto trending seemingly for no good reason, and like I can't explain that. I don't know anything about that. I'd say that like the weird thing about Unraveled is that it came around at a time when Polygon was kind of shifting its preferences and like what they wanted to make in our YouTube videos, and I don't know if I've said this story before somewhere else, but like the thing about the first Unraveled, which was about the Zelda timeline, was that we had someone higher up in the company who was like overseeing video stuff. They no longer work for Vox Media. They work somewhere else, but they were like, oh, what's a concept that a lot of people talk about on YouTube? And I was like, well, the Zelda timeline. And he's like, why don't you make a video about that? And I was like, no, I said that to say that I shouldn't be doing a thing about the Zelda timeline because there are hundreds of videos about it and it's not very interesting. Like, I don't know if I can bring anything to this.
Right.
But at that point we were kind of like, you know, rebranding. And so I was listening to everything he said and he was like, make a thing about the Zelda timeline.
I'm imagining a guy smoking a cigar, leaning back in a chair. What are these discussions like?
That.
Oh my God.
Exactly. There was like, you know, again, the person who was teaching this or was asking for this, like, again, very knowledgeable about online media and YouTube and like what works well, and had a lot of great advice. Don't want to knock him there. Had absolutely no idea about video games or video game culture. And so like when I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I think this would be a bad idea. And then was still kind of forced into making one. I was like, well, it. I'm gonna do every single Zelda media. I'm gonna do this. I'm going to not tell my boss. I'm going to book a studio. I'm going to get my good pal Clayton to come in and film me for 3 hours, and I'm gonna try to edit that into something that works. And I like didn't have a script during that part. I just had literally the flow chart of the things and the amount of research that I had to do for the week and a half before to be able to say something about each of them. And like, I just basically rambled for 3 hours in front of Clayton and posted on the wall and was like, this probably isn't going to work out well, but it was kind of like a last shot. Like at that point, I was also similarly feeling very beaten down and like very burnt out about the whole online media thing. And I was like, this is kind of my last shot because like this is something I'm enjoying doing. I'm going to try it and hope for the best.
Do you feel like it was, in a way, because of the pitch, did you feel like, well, I'm going to make a parody of all of the Zelda timeline videos? I mean, was that kind of the fuel for you?
That was kind of it. It was like, I don't think there's any like, it was like, no matter what I say about the Zelda timeline, I will be wrong because there's always going to be someone who knows more about me. And also because the canonical information has swapped multiple times. So like, I can't win this battle. Yeah. And so me trying to like succinctly sum it up or to like give a full explainer, either of those, it's not going to work. And so I was like, I can't win this. I might as well do something where there is no actual point to it. Like there's no point to winning. I might as well try to do something else. And like it did, quote unquote, well for the time, which was it hit 100,000 views in the first 2 weeks. And it was just successful enough that my boss Tara was like, would you like to do more of these? And I was like, sure. And so I wrote and filmed both the Mega Man and the Skyrim books on to be filmed on the same day, and then just had them banked to go out one right after the other. And I think that was the thing that locked it into people's brains. They were like immediately able to recognize, oh, this is what an Unraveled will be. This is what it's going to look like. And now I have 3 videos that I can refer to understand. And Skyrim was the one that actually went big. Skyrim books was like the question that I think, again, it was a question that I think everyone has had, but no one has wanted to actually do the work of like reading them.
Right.
It's just like, how many books are there? And so that was like just kind of the thing there. And I look back at the Skyrim book video and like, there's no point to it. Like they're really, it's just me talking for like 15 minutes. There's no actual like a big reveal, interesting arc in that. It's just like talking, and like I it's one of my least favorites as a result of that, just like as a creator, but it was the one that did so well and was able to propel me into keep doing more of them.
I'm interested in a specific point in that story where you were asked if you wanted to do more and you're like, yes. Whereas when it started out, hang on, are you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, weird. Of course, now it freezes for me. Anyways, but so when it started out, it seemed like a begrudging, like, this is freaking dumb, but I guess I'll technically do what the boss wants. And then you just were able to make it your own, that you then embraced it? Or was it just a matter of like, well, I can't deny success, so let's keep rolling with it and I'll just hold my tongue?
It was a little bit of both. I think what happened was that like I had, again, so much fun just like, again, with Clayton, just it was such a fun time to like record that. And it was like the first time in a very long time that I was able to do an in-studio shoot in front of the camera, just goofing off for a bit. And like I had such a blast doing that and editing it together that I was like, this could be fun to keep going. And like when Tara came back to me, I was like, here's one that I think it sounds boring. I'm gonna read all the Skyrim books, but I think it would be okay. And she was like, yeah, give it a shot. And like I think that's the thing that I would say Polygon really has, beyond just giving me a platform, like the thing that it really gave me was like knowledge into the experience of like collaborating with other very good creatives. Like I up until that point, like what was very like standoffish when people would like talk about my work and like give constructive criticism. I'd feel very like personally affected, but like that it became so comfortable like working with, again, my coworkers, that I got to the point where like they could be like, Brian, that's a bad idea, or like, Brian, why don't you do this idea? And it didn't feel like a personal attack. It just felt like, oh, they want this to be a good thing. And like that was a similar thing with my boss Tara, who would always be willing to like sometimes would push the ideas beyond, and I'd have to pull her back. I'd be like, no, I think that's too much, Tara. But like the thing was like it was such a great space at that, again, in that exact moment in time where there was kind of like a weird nebulous idea of what a Polygon video could be.
Yeah.
That like I could be just like, hey, can you let me film a thing about Mega Man robots and also Skyrim books? And she was like, give it a shot, see if it works. And it, yeah, I think like that kind of creative space of like having someone trust you enough to be like, try it, and if it sucks, we won't do it again. But if it works well, you can keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm curious, the on the try it front, like your Castlevania monster videos where there were several failed attempts. Was that a scary moment of what am I doing? This isn't working several times. The idea of going back to that over and over again seems terrifying.
Yeah, that was a very scary thing where because that was still, again, like at that point we had at least written, I hadn't put out one or two of the other ones, but like that one was not, that was like my first time now that we had a series. We had 3 things of what it could look like, and so I was like, well, I'll do Castlevania has a bunch of monsters. Why don't I talk about every single one of them, and I like put them in the D&D alignment chart. Why don't I do that? And again, we booked like 6 hours in the studio. It took like, again, after setup, like didn't finish it at that point. And then went to, again, a meeting room in my office after hours to film the rest of it. And like I tried to edit it together. I got most of the way through. Like I've just like an A cut of like seeing which parts I could do, parts I could use. And at the end of that, I was like, this sucks. Like this is and like I was like, I'm sure people would watch this, but I don't personally like it. Like I don't feel like this is good enough to put out into the world. And then I think it was a lot of it just like it was an overload of information, and the information I was giving was not novel or it didn't have any added benefit. Like there were not enough jokes. Like I just didn't have anything there. And that was when Tara was like, how about you just find the hottest one? And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, just find the hottest one. And I was like, okay, sure, sounds good. And so and that was like, it was really helpful to have that Castlevania episode where I could try a thing, realize it was bad, and then have a slight change to it where that kind of like helped me with the concept of like parameters, we called them, where it was like, oh, I will cut this number of Castlevania monsters so I don't have to talk about them at all. The parameters became a huge thing of like, as long as I can justify what I am doing, as long as regardless of how ridiculous and stupid it might seem, like as long as I can justify why I am throwing away a whole portion of something,
right,
then it becomes part of the process. And like it that was kind of unraveled after a while. It was like, oh, sometimes it's more interesting to show the process than it is to show the final result. And so we just kind of built on that and kept it going that way.
Yeah, I'm interested in the credits for Unraveled story editor.
Yes.
I'm curious what that means, what you learned from that process and how it kind of evolved.
Yeah, so the first Unraveled, as I mentioned, was just completely ad-libbed, and that's why it's so slapdash and all over the place. And like after a while, what we started to do was table reads of all of our scripts.
Wow.
And it's made things so much better as a result. Like I'd say that the big thing is usually Jenna and Pat were usually like my main go-to people for table reads for Unraveled. They like after a few locked into the tone and like how it works. There were a few actually like Jenna wrote the Fallout episode, and Pat wrote the Mortal Kombat one, and they were both wonderful. Like I think like the having again it became sort of like Unraveled Brian is what we would always say. Is like Unraveled Brian is the character. It's obviously not what I actually am in real life, and like it allows us to have that kind of distance into like, oh, sometimes what's funnier is if Brian looks like an absolute dunce or it seems like a jerk. Like it's funnier and better for the story if we make Brian look worse.
It's very Colbert, it feels like.
Yeah. And so that became a big thing. And so story editing was, again, we would take these scripts. Oftentimes it would be like, I have a trouble of like writing way too much. And so I'd come with like 4,000 words and we'd cut it down to 2,500 and like punch it up and make sure there were better jokes. And like a lot of that would also happen back when we were in person in studio. A lot of that would be like Pat behind the camera being like, oh, say this joke instead, or like, can you do that again this way? So it was a majorly collaborative effort. Like the work that I did was not just done by me, is what I'm saying. Like I've felt so fortunate and lucky to have a team of people that I could work alongside, that I trusted, and again, made my work infinitely better. Like I think we would have been stuck on the like Skyrim and Zelda ones for way longer, like that kind of style for longer, had I not gotten to the point where we could have story editing come in and like make it cohesive and interesting, and like allowed me to create stuff like the Waluigi one where it's not very lore heavy, but it is like arc heavy. And so I could make it something that was interesting to watch even if you knew nothing about Waluigi.
Yeah. Did you screen edits as well? Just to see where the laughs were?
Edits, do you mean like video editing?
Yeah. Would you have like a cut and then just get a group around in the office?
Yeah, so usually I would do a full edit, and then I would send it to Tara, our executive producer, and she would just give it the once over. And again, very lucky that she was willing to go with a lot of my choices. There were very few like creative choices that she would add. Like I always screwed up something with the words, tons of typos for me. But otherwise, it was very useful to have that like final check to make sure it worked out okay and it looked good. But that was it. It was usually just that. There were a few times when I would run by like specific sections, and I would like send it to someone and be like, does this look good? Is it too much? Does it need more? And that was also very useful, again, to have just a place to bounce those ideas around.
Yeah, how important was this process for landing kind of the modern Polygon video era? I mean, is it just, I mean, you talked about kind of those weird waters you were in of trying to figure out what is the tone here. Was it just, you know, Monster Factory was a note on the wall and then everyone's like, something like that again? Or more of that? How do we do this?
That was the hard part. Cause like, you know, when the McElroys left, like it was like, I feel like me leaving Polygon is, I would hope, like a much more secure position than what it felt like at that point when the McElroys left, because it was basically just them doing what they do, you know, over and over again, which is great, but it's also, you can't, I think a lot of content creators will fall into the pit of being like, oh, I need to do something exactly like that person. Like I need to make a video that is exactly like Monster Factory in order to be successful. And so a lot of my first few months there was just us trying to do similar things, like VO over gameplay, like, you know, the similar sort of vibe. And some of them turned out great. A lot of them were bad. Like having that chance to realize like we should be writing scripts that like are interesting and can, you know, teach an amount of things. I don't think Unraveled was the most educational show in the world, but it still had like moments in there.
Yeah.
And like I think that was like a kind of a shift for us, was like realizing that before it was like one person took a thing from writing or just recording all the way through editing to publishing without any like input from any of the other video creators. So like first 6 months of Polygon, I worked with the rest of the crew, but I wasn't like actually doing things with them. It was like completely, you are your own thing, do your own thing. And then after that, it became much more of like a collaborative space where we could work together and make everyone's videos better. And that was hugely important to making stuff that we were proud of and could actually do pretty well online.
I am still fascinated by that idea that this, I don't know, call it a revolution's a bit much, but kind of like this blossoming of creativity within that office came from the most, you know, well-worn, just obvious, do the Zelda timeline, do the thing that people search a lot. Like, is there a lesson in that, do you think, in just do the obvious, you idiot?
I mean, I think I wouldn't say it's necessarily do the obvious, because like, you know, I more than anything did not want to do the obvious there, right?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to do something else entirely, and I just like wasn't succeeding anywhere else. I think like, you know, don't want to tell you to do things out of spite, but sometimes you need just a little bit of spite in there to be like, no, I am sure that this will do well. Like, no, I am sure this is going to be good. Like, I can promise you this, and let me try. And if I fail, it's on me. You can completely put the blame on me, whatever. But like, you just have to like, at that point, it was such a desperate sort of thing for me, because again, I was feeling really like burnt out and just like I couldn't do anything there. And so having that chance to like really completely succeed or fail because of like an idea that I had was the thing that kind of propelled me into making something.
I love that idea too of, from the outside perspective, I think obviously everything's more secure than it really looks, you know, that we take a lot of media for granted. Mm-hmm. And I love from the outside, it's like, oh, Polygon, I know they have good videos. I'll check them out every once in a while. They're good. And I just love that inside glimpse of you just being like, I have to do something. I'm dying over here.
I think like, I mean, you obviously as a former like corporate video producer understand the like the kind of grind of it, like, and the like the weird pressure of just working in media of any sort, where, you know, every other month you hear about a company laying off like an entire group of people. Right. And like it kind of felt like when I joined in, it was the quote unquote pivot to video, which was like a big thing about like doing Facebook video and doing like, this is where we're going to make our money from here on out. And so they put a lot of money into video producers. And then suddenly that money it never existed and it was not coming in. And so then tons of people got laid off. Like February of my first year, like 2.5 months after I got hired, there was a huge round of layoffs at Vox Media. And like, that was the kind of wake up call moment for me. It was like, these people that I know personally and are good at what they do can just get gone for things that they have no control over. And like, you know, unionize your workplaces. The union was a great thing to have at Vox Media. Wonderful. Like, that was a major part for me to like, that kept me around at Vox Media for so much longer, because it like enacted change and made me see the company actually put in better policies and like tried their best to, you know, keep the talent that they had. So yeah, I think that like that constant fear of like, I could be doing as well as can be, and I could also still get laid off for basically no reason, like just because of how the markets work. It's a scary thing to be working in media that way. And like, you know, now that I'm self-employed and am in an even more shaky situation, but like, it's just, it feels slightly more, it feels weird to say, but I feel slightly more secure knowing that it's like, I'll never fire myself. I'll keep trying to do the things that I want to do, and hopefully people will keep coming to it.
Yes, you know there's not going to be any lightning strikes out of the blue. Unless I haven't checked out your streams. I assume it's not just racial slurs on your biking streams or anything. Okay, cool. Way to go, man.
Trying, definitely not aiming to get into that side of the game. I'll say that like a big reason why I was leaving games space is that like, you know, MinMax does great work, and like I think like there's a lot of wonderful places that like do good stuff, but it does suck to be tied to like, part of the reason I want to help make the stuff at the earlier end is that like, I don't know if you've heard this, but some video game companies are shitty, right? Like they're not great. They have bad labor practices. They do bad things to their employees. And like, it sucks to have my livelihood be tied to the work of a company I have no control over, right? So like, if I have to talk about a game because it's the biggest game of the year, but also it was done under crunch practices and it was done in a terrible environment, like that sucks. It sucks to have to do that. It sucks to be like, oh, well, I could not talk about the most important game of the year and then get no money and like have no sort of source of like income there. But like there were moments when I would be like, I kind of have to do this in order to pay for my salary and my coworkers' salaries. And so it feels nice in some ways to kind of know that like, I will do my best to try to be a good person and like do good work that way, and not have to, you know, be the middleman between another sort of company that I have no control over.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got a pretty up close and unique perspective on this with like the sponsored stuff that you did, like, you know, the Crash Bandicoot 4. I don't know how many other ones you did, but what was your takeaway from that experience?
So I was relatively fortunate that like the people who would come to me for those Unraveleds, like they would have the sponsored, it was just that, and it was also Valorant from Riot. And the like, those ones I was able to kind of make my own sort of choice there, while still obviously having to like hit the talking points, right? And like it was a little weird. Like there were moments when I was like, is this exactly the kind of stuff I want to make? But there were also moments when I was like, I can't believe I'm getting away with this. Like, I can't believe what I have done for Crash Bandicoot is essentially talk about how nostalgia is a trap and you shouldn't be stuck in it forever. When Crash Bandicoot 4, some might say, was cashing in on that, right? Like, I think like, I can't believe I was able to do that. And same thing with like being able to talk about like the absurdity of you know, online gaming presences with my gamer space, like being able to talk about that in a thing where so much of online gaming is about looking as cool as you possibly can and like being as visible and present. And I think like I was in a very lucky position that I could talk about what I wanted to. And Vox Media does have, as part of like the union, like you have when you're making editorial content or whatever, which is like a video, the advertisers don't get to see the final cut, Like
Nice.
the sponsors won't get to be like, oh, you need to take out this 3 minutes or whatever. They get to see like the steps leading up to it and like approve it there. But like once it is done, it's done. And I that was very good. It never I was lucky enough that I didn't have to go too much back and forth between PR people and myself in order to like create a thing.
And this is a very specific question, but those emails from Activision, like during the crash video,
Those ones weren't true, except for, well, this one wasn't. I faked the email for it, but they were going to send me the official Crash Bandicoot suit.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
The big one, like and I was like, oh, I really want that. But then they're like, oh, would you be able to bring it into your apartment? You need a freight elevator and double doors. And I was like,
what?
I live in New York City. You know that's not possible. I have an apartment that barely fits the stuff I have already. I can't bring a huge crate of a thing. And so I like sent it back. I was like, can I just buy the Barty City one? And they were like, I guess so. I mean, it's not
Wow.
like and so that was a fun little moment there. But it was I will always regret the ability not being able to get into the official Crash Bandicoot suit, but it's a quarantine. I can't be going anywhere where there's double doors and spaces for me to hop into an extremely large thing.
Yeah, it was a funnier angle for sure. But your skin didn't crawl too much at the idea of doing sponsored content. It was just like, well, I'm fortunate to have this job, so I just have to go with it.
I think there was a point where, like, especially during this year, right?
Yeah.
Where it's been unbelievably rocky and like seeing so many of like there were tons of furloughs at Vox Media, and there was one person who was laid off from Polygon just as a result of the pandemic. And I think it was kind of like before that I was very not interested in doing sponsored content. Like I didn't really want to do as much as, you know, I think there was that kind of moment where I was like, if I don't do this, it maybe not me personally, but like if there is any chance for me to do these 2 sponsored videos and save a couple jobs at Polygon, I should do that. Like I care about these other people. I don't want them to lose their jobs. I would like to take this advertiser's money and turn it into keeping people at the company. So it was kind of like a moment of like, oh, like if I choose not to do this, and I technically had the right to be like, oh, this isn't going to be good, or I don't want to do this. But like if I do that, it has extremely bad consequences to not just me, but to like, again, the people I work with and care about. And so that was a real major impetus of like, I have to do this. I have to suck it up a little bit for some of them, and try my best. But again, I very lucky that the advertisers were willing to kind of let me go wild with it. So
Yeah.
it worked out okay.
Here's a weird question for you. Does it feel good to have videos do as well as yours have done over the last 3 years? Is that satisfying? Because everyone's clawing to get there.
It's a different kind of bad. Like
Oh, good.
You know, I thought and like ever since I, you know, started making videos back in middle school, again, those no longer exist, so it's great. But like I would, you know, refresh the page and be like, what? Oh, I have 36 views now? Like, yes, I made it. Like I'm now past 30 views. Like that same sort of like dopamine rush of seeing numbers go up. Like as gamers, we care a lot when number get high. And so like it was really tough for me the first like year that I was at Polygon to not just constantly check this stuff and like check to see how many new comments are coming in, check to see how many like views were happening. And like, you know, talked a lot to my therapist about this, and like a lot of there's it just comes down to like you have to the beauty and the horror of getting people to see you is that like once it gets onto the YouTube trending page, it's no longer the audience that like I specifically care about and want to watch it. Like, yeah, there will be people who are now introduced to my content through that. And like, that's wonderful. And I'm glad that it brings new people who like the stuff I make, but it also brings, I would say 60% of people who are like, who the hell is this guy? What's his deal? Like, you know,
Yeah.
like
That's a sign of success, is people bashing your mustache, I guess.
Exactly. The mustache was a big thing for me. That kind of was a moment where after the poker app, I was like, I want to try to grow a mustache at some point. But then I was like, no, but like I have a video, like I have a kind of a brand, and like people know me by my face, and like that would be bad. And then like midway through that section, I was like, that like thought process, I was like, no, now I have to grow a mustache, because as soon as I start caring about what like people on the internet care about my appearance, like then I am broken. Like I can't let other people that I don't even know have a sway over my personal choices.
Then
And,
you
like,
are Larry the Cable
know,
Guy at that point. Just pack it up.
right? Yeah, I think like what was great was that, you know, my partner and my brother were both like, hell yeah, grow a mustache. It looks great. You're doing wonderfully. Back when it did not look great. And that's all I needed. It was like, I was like, you know what? Two people I really care about in my life and myself, I'm going to grow a mustache, and that's going to be like, I want to do it, and it's worth it. So that's the background story of why that started happening.
But hey, but the overall idea is it offsets the feeling good of the number going high, because that also is connected with more and more people being negative in the comments. Is that the takeaway?
That's the big thing. And like, it doesn't matter, you know, it's, you can get hundreds upon hundreds of really lovely comments, but like you read one that's like, dumb hair. And you're like, oh no, dumb hair. Oh no, what? And like, you'll like completely ignore the like people who are like, hey, I really like this content, thanks for doing it. Like, I'll just be like, oh, I'm thinking about dumb hair for the rest of my life. Like it's impossible to stop caring about that. And like, that's why I try again to not read the comments. That's why I've like stopped being on Twitter as much, just because like it is such a stressful thing for me to be online, but it's also my job. So why did I choose this? But you know, it's like, getting a bunch of visibility is, I'm again, I can't like extremely privileged in having an audience that's this big, and I'm so lucky that people like my stuff, and that's what I care about. But like, what internet comments are is that it's basically like, you know, when you leave a movie theater back when those existed, and you would talk to your friends and be like, oh, make jokes essentially about like what was happening in there, and like crack, and like, even if you loved the video, you just want to make a fun joke about it. That's what the YouTube comment section is that everyone wants to be funny and get likes on it. And so it doesn't matter how good it is. It's basically like you leave the stage after your high school play, and then you have to sit there as everyone in the audience talks about you you. And it's like, I don't care if most of these are nice. It's still a lot of information being put at me, and it's very stressful. And again, it feels like very weird to complain about this. Like I am again in such a lucky position that I can do what I do, but there are the stresses that come along with it.
Yeah. How long have you been thinking about leaving?
Probably, I mean, like, in my brain, I kind of, just as an arbitrary thought, like I was like, I don't really want to stick around at like Polygon for longer than 3 years or so. Like I think it'd be nice to kind of try new things. But when I was thinking that, like I had nothing to fall back on. Like I didn't have a big audience outside of Polygon. And I think it was kind of originally like plans for this year. It's, you know, weird to say this, but like it was South by Southwest I was supposed to do a thing there for Polygon. I was supposed to talk about Unraveled and everything. And I was also supposed to announce that we were going to be doing a large live show of Unraveled that was going to happen in September of 2020. And then obviously South by got canceled, so I didn't go there. I didn't announce it. And then at a certain point, we were like, "There's no reason for me to write this anymore." Like I had written the first few scenes of it, but like other than that, there was no more reason for me to do this, because I was like, the most recent, or the most like pie in the sky hope is that we could potentially put it on in 2021.
Right. What was it, by the way?
It was just a big weird Unraveled that was, I mean, like, partially about the terrible argument of video games versus art.
Oh boy.
And so it was going to be something wild. I think I'm kind of glad I didn't have to do it because I wasn't sure if I'd have anything good to say about it. But
again, it goes back to that first lesson of embracing the obvious.
Yeah, right. I think that was the hope, was that I could hopefully do something interesting with that. But that was kind of like a moment where I was like, oh, maybe after the live show, I'll try to do something else. And then obviously that didn't pan out. And so then midway through this year, I started to do more writing and like more production on my own personal channel. And I was like, I like doing this and I like to be able to have that kind of freedom. So I think I'm going to give myself the thing. I will stop working for Polygon at the end of 2020. And so that's kind of how it turned out. And I like told my bosses like multiple months in advance. I was like, hey, I don't want this to spring up on you. I don't want this to be like a 2 week sort of thing. Like I'm thinking about leaving Polygon. And, you know, basically had enough time to get my affairs in order, write the will and testament, right? And get everything necessary and make the final Unraveled. And so that was kind of the plan from maybe about midway through this year.
Did you have a discussion about, you know, should Unraveled continue without you?
We talked about that because there was, you know, the McElroys still do Monster Factory on their personal channel. And but for me, I was like, I don't, like if I wanted Unravel to continue, I would still keep working at Polygon, right? Like if that was the thing I wanted to continue doing, I would just keep doing it. And so me leaving was more about like, I think I have said what I want to say about video game lore. I think if I kept doing it, I would stop caring as much about it and I'd stop making as good of videos, I guess. So I think this is the right time to kind of wrap it up and like just, you know, put it to rest in a way that I felt happy and proud of.
Yeah, it's I mean, baked into the core of Polygon's DNA are the McElroys, and it's so bizarre to have this core lesson of at a certain point, the personalities are going to be so big they won't need this site. And so to see this happen multiple times across almost every site, you know, at this point, but then also at Polygon, did you feel that tension of people being like, hey, this kid's really taken off, and then like, wait a minute, this kid's taken off. Well, what do we do about this? This is a bad thing, actually.
I've felt very fortunate that I was supported. I think like there is a certain amount of like, and this is kind of a thing we've, you know, it feels this kind of way with a lot of media companies, but Vox Media puts a lot of, I guess like they a lot of emphasis and effort into people who are big on the internet, and like that tends to be the way to like move up, as opposed to what most companies would do, which is like if you're making good work regardless of how visible you are online, you should be moving up in the world essentially. And like I think that was it's a weird thing because like obviously like they put a lot of emphasis on people blowing up and having these large personalities and getting a large audience. And then obviously what'll happen at the end of that is that like they could go off on their own. And like you see that not only just in videos, but like so many people have left large publications to do Substack newsletters, right? And that's it's a very strange thing because it like I didn't leave because I didn't enjoy working with the other people. Like I cared. In fact, that's probably why I stuck around for so long, is because I cared so much about my video producers and my coworkers, and I wanted them to do well. And I want to like, I think there was a bit of a moment where people were like, oh, Brian is maybe getting too big, but I also don't think they did anything to help emphasize the rest of the team. Like I had multiple conversations with higher ups, not even in Polygon, but just like outside, like in the corporate side of things, where I was like, look, if you don't support people, they're not going to make good work. And what you're doing is you're continuing to support me, who is gonna be fine regardless of what I do. Like you continue to put the cachet under me, and you're rising one ship as opposed to bringing up the whole ocean to rise all boats, right? Like it's it's bad business and it's not going to work well because there are so many other talented people that I'm working with right now who are just not given the same platform as me. And like, sure, we can talk about, you know, what things people like will watch online, but like there have been so many videos that other people have produced at Polygon, like Clayton and Jenna and Simone, and I'm just going to name every single video producer at this point in time. But like they have done super well, but instead of seeing that and being like, keep doing more of that, it's more like, oh, cool. End of discussion, right? Like there's that like there's a disconnect between being like, oh, I can see what you could turn into, and instead it was more like, oh, Brian is doing this thing, let him keep doing that, right?
Do you think it's
here's more.
Is it a lack of support paycheck wise, or a lack of support for other people in terms of like, you get a show?
Kind of both, right? Like I think there's a lot of like, there's a lack of time support is I think what is a huge thing. It's like, there, you know, and this has happened. This isn't every media company. Like this is not purely a Polygon that I'm talking about, but like a lot of times when people are, you know, on the lower ladders of like junior reporter or whatever, they will be like, here, produce a story every single day, produce 3 stories every day, like do that. And then they'll also be like, oh, but if you want to do a big project, go for it. Like really, really branch out and try your best, but continue to make those one story every day. And so it's like, you can't do that, right? Like you can't have the same amount of like, oh, if I'm and this was sort of how it was with the intro of me at Polygon, was like, hey, produce a video a week, but also try to make some really great series, like try to make a really beautiful thing. And I just didn't have the time to. I was so focused on like making sure I cranked out at least one video a week that I didn't have the chance to work on that other stuff. And so like sometimes, you know, I'd talk to people at like Eater who would have like tons of sponsored videos, and like that's great, good to get the money in, but like as a result you have constant that churn of like, I need to produce this video, and so I have no chance to develop something outside of that and make something that is inherently my own, or just something that is like good enough and can stand on its own. So I'd say that like, obviously paycheck support is a massive part of it, right? Like getting paid what you are owed, and that I think like makes you feel like you want to stick around. But a lot of it is also like, give people, if you want people to make good stuff, take away some of their other responsibilities, or at least give them a week or two to not have to do that stuff so they can actually make something worthwhile.
Yeah. It happens all the time in the video game industry. You know, like, you know, we went through a bunch of interns back when I was at Game Informer, and I always tried to stress this with them, that like, this time is going to fly by. And it's, you know, a larger or a smaller example of a larger theme, I think, where it's so easy to get on that treadmill and crank out these things. And you need to take that moment every once in a while to look behind you and think, is there anything here that I'm proud of? What's going on the reel? What's going on the resume? What am I going to hold up high in retrospect? Because that time can fly when you're just shoveling coal into the furnace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's terrifying.
That constant like, the constant churn is even outside of like, say you are able to produce one thing a day relatively quickly, like it's still taxing. It's still like work. You're obviously going to be a little more tired after that. So like sometimes you just don't want to. I was saying this to my other friend, but like I had a really terrible job when I lived in Baltimore, and I originally was like, oh, it'll be fine because it's a steady job, and then after I leave my job, I'll have all this extra time from 5 to 10 to do all the stuff I want to do. But I'd leave the job and feel terrible, and I would just be like, I'm going to sit and play Fire Emblem again. Like, that's going to be what I'm going to do for the rest of the night. And like, I have no energy to create anything else. So sometimes, again, it just comes to like, give them the space, give them a chance to like have a day where they don't know what they're doing at all. And, you know, people will fill that space, or they'll, you know, or maybe they won't, but it's still worth a try, right? Like, it's still worth it to see what comes out of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Summarizing things, because people see you as the guru on top of the mountain here, whether you like it or not. You are the video expert, and forget the word viral. Popular video seems much better, healthier. Okay, I'm trying to think of any takeaways. It's, you know, go for the obvious, but put a twist on it. Mm-hmm. Is that you correct fair. Me? Okay. Yeah. Go bigger than you have any right to go. Go more in depth than you
Yes.
have any right to go.
Try your best to, I mean, do that to only a certain extent. I think a lot of that is more like put in, if you want to do a kind of like a weird researchy thing, do the research and let that write the script, right? Because like there have been so many times when I would come into an Unravel to be like, here's going to be the point at the end. And then I started to read all the fan wikis and I'd be like, that point doesn't make sense. I'm not going to focus on that anymore. I'm going to write something that's more interesting. So if you're going to go big, let it take you where it needs to go. I originally, for the Halo novels, had, again, plans. I was like, oh, maybe this will be like a fun, goofy thing. But at the end of it, I was like, no, this has changed me. Like, I have to do something that's more interesting here.
And I loved that video too. I love that you have that one. God, it's sad that I forget the name of the book, but I love that there's that one book you're like, no, this actually rules. Like, this is actually. Which one is that again?
Those ones, oh shoot, it's the Kilo 5 trilogy by Karen Travis. Those ones are good. The fact that I still remember the name of the books should tell you that I did actually enjoy them.
Yeah, exactly. And then another key pillar, group feedback. Don't be too self-indulgent. Get feedback on every step of the process. It can only improve things.
Yeah,
even though it hurts.
Yeah, I think that one is the thing that really has like made my stuff so much better, and like it's changed me to, you know, I feel like everyone in high school, college is like, oh, I'll be a lone wolf. I'm gonna write this whole thing myself.
Right.
I'm the smartest person in the world, but like you're not. And other people are also smart, and like trust other people. It's like I feel it's being independent. At least I still get to work with my partner Karen Hahn on a lot of our writing and everything, and I'll have that bounce back. And like my other creative partners like Jonah Scott and my sister, like I think those things are going to be the things that help me make good videos, as opposed to just me being like, oh, I'll leave in my little box over here and I'll write the best thing that's ever existed. Nah, like let other people talk to you and like bounce those ideas around. It'll make it better.
Yeah. Other big takeaways that we haven't hit? Other big lessons from your 3 years or your entire career at this point?
I don't know. It feels weird to talk. Like I've never thought I would be at a point where I can talk about my career as a video producer, a YouTuber. But it really, I think like the things that have always done best for me is beyond like, you know, feedback, as I just said, super important, but there should always be like that 10% that you actually care about that other people might not 100% agree with. That like 10% of the video that is purely yours, that like you won't let other people change, because there is a high probability that if you really care about something and you put that into your video, other people will connect to it. And it might not be the biggest audience, but like, you know, some of the videos that have the least amount of views on my YouTube have had like the most responses from people being like, hey, I really cared about this. Thank you for making it. And like, that's the stuff that really keeps you going as a creative, not the view count or anything else.
Right. It's the retention. It's giving people a handhold to be like, oh, I like that guy because he loves this as much as I do.
Yeah.
Exactly. Great. Hey, thank you for your time, man.
Of course. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for all the hard work throughout the years. And, you know, it seems obvious, but yeah, hats off to the entire Polygon Video team. I think they've been killing it throughout the entire run of that site, realistically. But I think in the last couple of years in particular, I think they've just been doing a fantastic job. Do you have things specifically you'd like to plug, sir?
I mean, if you want to see my videos, you can search up my full name, Brian David Gilbert, on YouTube. That's my channel. I'm also on Twitch and also on Patreon of patreon.com/Brian David Gilbert. I have a podcast where I make goofy songs based off of tweet suggestions for songs called Let's Make a Music. And I do that again with Karen, Laura, and Jonah, who I mentioned as my creative friends and partners. I'd love to have you hopefully enjoy my other weird things that come out. Who knows what's going to come out of it? I don't even know what the plan is for the next few months. So let's see.
I find it difficult to believe that within 5 years, you will not have produced a full musical. That has to be in the cards, right?
We'll see. I mean, hopefully, maybe someday we'll be able to be in a live event space together. I would love to do that too. I think regardless of what I produce, there will probably be some sort of music aspect to it, even if it's not a full musical. So here's hoping.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks again for your time. And thanks so much for watching or listening to this interview. We have other videos on our channel, other interviews, all that fun stuff. So please check it out. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
MinMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better. The deepest dive is the best, most thorough discussions about games on the internet. Prove us wrong, please. The MinMax Show podcast airs every Thursday. Patreon supporters vote on what we stream every single week, and a whole lot more. Give us a shot, try subscribing to the YouTube channel, and we hope we can win you over.